Hey, I want to do a quick lesson on interval notation because we're going to need this for finding domain and range. So I'm going to start by graphing x is greater than 4. All right, so if I were doing this on our number line, I would come to the number line, write an open circle at 4 because we're not including the 4, and then we're going to go to the right. All right, an arrow going to the right. So that's how you would graph it. Now, for interval notation, we're going to start with the number 4 and use a comma, and then we're going to go all the way out to positive infinity. Now, to indicate that we're not including the 4, you would use a parentheses. And whenever you are dealing with infinity, whether it's negative or positive, you can never get to infinity, so you can never include it. So you have to use a parentheses. So this means x is greater than 4. Okay, that's the interval notation. All right, so let's do another example. All right, in this one, we're going to do x is greater than or equal to 2. So on the number line, we're going to go to 2. And in this case, we're going to close the circle because we are including 2. And then we're going to have an arrow going to the right. Okay, now the interval notation is going to be similar to what we just did. It's going to be 2, comma, positive infinity. Now, to indicate that we're including the 2, you would use a bracket. Now, the way that I like to remember this is I use a little tick mark here and a little tick mark. And if you look at that, that looks like an I, which stands for include. That's how I remember it. All right, but over here on the positive infinity, it would be an open, it would be a parentheses again. So that's how you would do the interval notation for x is greater than or equal to 2. All right, let's do a few more examples. So now I'm going to do x is less than or equal to a negative 3. So on the number line, I would go to a negative 3, and I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to have an arrow going to the left. Now for my interval notation, I'm going to do, you always read from left to right, always from left to right. So I'm going to start with a negative infinity, and then I'm going to go all the way over to a negative 3. Now, remember, this has to be a parenthesis since we're dealing with infinity, or negative infinity. And because we are including a negative 3, we would use a bracket. So that's how you would write it. All right, let's do another couple examples. Now, in this example, we have x is greater than 2, but less than or equal to 6. Okay, so on the number line, we're going to go to 2 first. We're going to put an open circle because we're not including it. And then we're going to go to 6, and we're going to have a closed circle because we are including that too. And because x has to be between 2 and 6, we could just put a number, we just put a line there that connects them. Now for the interval notation, it's kind of similar to what we were doing. It's going to be a 2, comma 6. And since we are not including the 2, we're going to use parentheses. And because we are including the 6, we're going to use a bracket. So that's what it would look like. X is greater than 2, but less than or equal to 6. All right, so I want to do one more. Oops. So now this one is going to be x is less than a negative 2, or x is greater than or equal to a positive 5. Now, the way we would graph this is you would go to a negative 2, and you're going to have an open circle because we're not including the negative 2, and then we're going to go left. And then we're going to go to 5, and we are going to close that circle, and we're going to have an arrow going out to the right. That's how we would do that. Now, the interval notation is very similar, except we've got to break it up into 2 pieces. So the first piece, we're going to say a negative infinity over to a negative 2. And remember, this has to be parentheses. And because we're not including the negative 2, this is going to be parentheses. Now, here's the difference. And this is something you got to use. The or. When you say or, that's like a big U, which stands for union. All right, so whenever you have an or, you got to use a U. And now we just go back and we finish it up. So we have 5, a positive 5, over to a positive infinity, and we're going to include the 5. And of course, we have to have a parentheses on the infinity part. So that's what it would look like. Let me move this a little bit so everyone can see it. Oops. So that's what it would look like. You have to break it up into 2 pieces, but that's it. Hopefully this, guys, will help you on your delta math and doing the finding domain and range.